The black Range Rover slowed at the intersection. Inside, Princess Anne sat beside Catherine, Princess of Wales. Neither woman noticed the white van pulling up behind them. It was 9:47 p.m. on a cold November evening in London. The streets were quiet. Too quiet, the driver, a royal protection officer named Simon, glanced in the rearview mirror. Something felt wrong. His hand moved toward the radio. Before he could speak, the van's doors flew open. 4 men in dark tactical gear rushed toward the royal vehicle. Simon's heart stopped. This wasn't a protest. This wasn't paparazzi. These were professionals. Lock the doors, Simon shouted, but it was already too late. One of the men aimed a device at the car's electronic system. A sharp buzz. The locks clicked open. Catherine's eyes widened. Anne reached for her phone, but a gloved hand yanked the door open. Out, now, a masked voice commanded. The 2 princesses were pulled from the vehicle. Simon lunged forward, but a second attacker slammed him against the car. Blood trickled from his temple. The royal guard posted 50 meters away, heard the commotion, and began sprinting toward the scene. But the robbers were fast. Terrifyingly fast. They knew exactly what they were doing. One man grabbed Anne's handbag. Another tore Catherine's bracelet, a gift from Prince William, from her wrist. The third attacker reached for her engagement ring. Catherine's hand trembled as she tried to pull away. "Don't make this difficult," the man hissed. Anne stepped forward, placing herself between Catherine and the robbers. Even at 74, Princess Anne was not someone who backed down easily. Her voice was steady, cold even. "What you want? Leave her alone before this story continues. If you're loving the drama and want more emotional, true stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't regret it." The lead robber laughed. The royal family, brought to their knees. How does it feel? But then something changed. A shadow moved in the dark. The royal guard, Sergeant James Callahan, arrived. He didn't shout. He didn't hesitate. He moved like water, silent, fast, unstoppable. In 3 seconds, he disarmed the man closest to Catherine. The robber's weapon clattered to the pavement. The other attackers turned. One swung at Callahan with a metal rod. The sergeant ducked, swept the man's legs, and dropped him hard onto the concrete. The sound echoed through the empty street. "Get back in the car," Callahan shouted to the princesses, but the robbers weren't done. The leader pulled something from his jacket. A blade glinted under the streetlight. Catherine's breath caught. Anne grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the Range Rover. Simon, blood still dripping from his head, stumbled to his feet and shielded them both. Callahan faced 3 armed men alone. His training kicked in. He moved between them and the royals, creating space, buying time. Sirens wailed in the distance, but they were still too far away. "You're surrounded," Callahan said calmly. "Leave now, or you'll regret it." The leader hesitated. His men looked at each other. They had planned this for weeks. They knew the routes. They knew the security gaps. But they hadn't planned for a royal guard like Callahan. One robber made a choice. He lunged at Callahan with the knife. What happened next would be talked about for years. The knife sliced through the air toward Callahan's chest. Time seemed to slow, Catherine gasped. Anne pulled her closer, shielding her with her own body. Simon tried to push forward, but his legs buckled from the earlier blow. Callahan moved, not away from the blade, but toward it. He caught the attacker's wrist mid-swing, twisted hard, and heard the snap. The man screamed. The knife fell. Before the others could react, Callahan struck again. An elbow to another attacker's jaw, a knee to the third man's ribs. The leader backed up, eyes wide behind his mask. This wasn't supposed to happen. They had studied everything. Royal schedules, security patterns, weak points. But they hadn't accounted for one man who refused to let them win. "Run." The leader shouted to his crew. 2 of the robbers scrambled to their feet and sprinted toward the van. The third, still clutching his broken wrist, stumbled after them. The leader backed away slowly, eyes locked on Callahan. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," Callahan replied. The man turned and ran. The white van screeched away into the night, tires smoking. Silence fell over the street. Catherine's hands shook. Anne's face was pale but composed. Simon leaned against the car, pressing his hand to his bleeding head. Callahan turned to the princesses. "Are you hurt?" Catherine shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "You saved us just doing my job, ma'am. But it was more than that. Everyone there knew it." Within minutes, police cars surrounded the scene. Paramedics arrived to treat Simon. Detective Inspector Helen Morris stepped out of an unmarked car and approached the group. "Your Royal Highnesses," she said with a slight bow. "Can you tell me what happened?" Anne spoke first. Her voice was steady, every word precise. "For men, tactical gear. They disabled the car's locks electronically. They knew what they were doing." Maurice's face darkened. "This was planned. They took my bracelet," Catherine said quietly, "and they tried to take my ring. We'll find them. I promise you that." But as the night wore on, a troubling picture emerged. The robbers had vanished. No trace of the white van. No fingerprints. No DNA. Security cameras in the area had been disabled minutes before the attack. These weren't ordinary thieves. They were a team of elite criminals, possibly with inside information. Back at Kensington Palace, Prince William paced the floor. When Catherine walked in, he rushed to her and wrapped her in his arms. She finally let herself cry. The fear she'd been holding back came flooding out. "I thought," she couldn't finish the sentence. "You're safe now," William whispered. "That's all that matters." But safety felt fragile. Someone had planned this attack. Someone had known their route. Someone had sold them out. The next morning, the story broke. Headlines screamed across every newspaper and news site. Royal ambush. Princesses attacked by elite gang. Royal guards, heroic stand. Photos of the crime scene flooded social media. The public was outraged. How could this happen in the heart of London? Inside Scotland Yard, Detective Inspector Morris assembled a task force. 12 of the best investigators in the country. They had one mission: find the robbers and whoever helped them. "These men are professionals," Morris told her team. "But professionals make mistakes. We just need to find theirs." Meanwhile, Sergeant James Callahan became an overnight hero. News outlets wanted interviews. People stopped him on the street to thank him. But Callahan stayed quiet. He didn't want fame. He'd simply done what any royal guard would do, or had he? Because late that night, alone in his apartment, Callahan's phone buzzed. An unknown number. A single text message that made his blood run cold. It read, "You got lucky. Next time you won't." Callahan stared at the message. His hand tightened around the phone. Someone was watching him. Someone knew his private number. He took a screenshot and immediately called Detective Inspector Maurice. "They're threatening me," he said when she answered. "I'll have officers at your flat within 10 minutes, Maurice replied. "Don't go anywhere." Callahan couldn't just sit and wait. His mind raced. The attack hadn't been random. The robbers knew too much. The timing. The route. The security gaps. There was a leak. Someone on the inside had given them information. Across London, in a dark basement, the 4 robbers sat around a table. The leader, a man named Victor, threw his mask onto the floor. His jaw was still sore from Callahan's elbow. "We were supposed to be in and out in 90 seconds, Victor growled. "What happened?" "That guard happened," one of the others said, nursing his broken wrist. "No one said there'd be someone like him."
Oh.
Victor slammed his fist on the table. "We had inside help. They told us the route would be clear." "Maybe our contact lied," another man suggested. "Or maybe," Victor said slowly, "we were set up." The thought hung in the air like poison. If someone had set them up, if someone had wanted them to fail, then they were in far more danger than they realized. Victor pulled out a burner phone and dialed a number. It rang twice before someone answered. "We need to talk," Victor said. "Tonight?" The voice on the other end was cold, emotionless. "You failed." There's nothing to discuss. We did exactly what you said. Someone changed the plan. Long pause. Perhaps you're not as good as you claimed. The line went dead. Victor stared at the phone, then hurled it against the wall. It shattered into pieces. His crew exchanged nervous glances. They'd stolen jewelry worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. But now they realized something darker was at play. Need to disappear, one of them said. Leave the country. Not yet, Victor replied. First, we find out who set us up. And why. Back at Kensington Palace, Catherine couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, looking out at the guards patrolling the grounds. William sat beside her, holding her hand. They're still out there, she whispered. Scotland Yard will find them, William assured her. But what if they come back? What if next time there won't be a next time? William said firmly. I won't let anything happen to you. But both of them knew that promises couldn't stop bullets or blades. Security had already been increased. New protocols were in place. Every royal movement would now be escorted by twice as many guards. But the damage was done. The illusion of safety had been shattered. Princess Anne, meanwhile, had her own thoughts about the attack. She sat in her study at Gatcombe Park, replaying the events in her mind. Something bothered her. The way the robbers had moved, the things they'd said, the leader's voice. How does it feel? He had asked, not give me your valuables, not hand over the jewelry. He'd wanted to humiliate them, to make them feel powerless. This wasn't about money. Anne was certain of it now. This was personal. Someone had wanted to send a message to the royal family. But who and why? She picked up her phone and called a number she rarely used. It belonged to an old friend from her military charity work. A man who had connections in the intelligence community. Anne, he answered. I heard what happened. Are you all right? I'm fine, Marcus. But I need a favor. Name it. I need to know if there's been any chatter. Threats against the family, plans, anything unusual. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I'll make some calls. But Anne, you should let the police handle this. The police are looking for criminals, Anne said. I'm looking for answers. She hung up and walked to the window. Rain streaked down the glass. Somewhere out there, the men who attacked them were planning their next move, and intended to be ready. Detective Inspector Morris worked through the night. Her team analyzed every frame of footage they could find. Traffic cameras, shop security, phone records. Finally, at 3 a.m., a breakthrough came. Inspector, one of her officers called out. We found the van. Maurice rushed over. Where? Abandoned near the docks. Burned out? They torched it. Maurice cursed under her breath. Any evidence inside? Forensics is going through it now. But ma'am, there's something else. The officer pulled up a traffic camera image on his screen. It showed the white van 2 hours before the attack, parked outside a warehouse in East London. Run the address, Morris ordered. Within minutes, they had a name. The warehouse was registered to a shell company. The company had ties to an international crime syndicate known for high-profile thefts across Europe. But there was another detail that made Morris's pulse quicken. The company had a silent partner, someone with connections to British intelligence, someone with access to royal schedules and security protocols, someone on the inside. We have a traitor, Maurice whispered. The hunt had just become far more dangerous. The warehouse sat silent in the gray morning light. Detective Inspector Morris stood outside with her tactical team, watching forensics sweep the building. Inside, they'd found traces of the robbers. Discarded food containers, cigarette butts, a laptop with the hard drive removed. But the most chilling discovery was a map. It had been left behind, pinned to the wall. A detailed route map of royal movements over the past 3 months. Every location marked. Every security checkpoint noted. Red circles highlighted the weakest points. Someone fed them everything, one of the forensic officers said. Maurice studied the map, her jaw tight. This took months to compile. Whoever's behind this has been planning for a long time. It was the chief superintendent, Morris, we have a problem, he said. The media got wind that this might be an inside job. The palace is in panic mode. They want answers now. Tell them we're close, Morris replied, though she wasn't sure that was true. Close isn't good enough. The royal family wants a full security review, and they want whoever leaked information found and prosecuted. Morris ended the call and looked back at the map. One of the marked locations jumped out at her. It was the exact intersection where Princess Anne and Catherine had been attacked. But there was a notation beside it in small handwriting. A single word perfect. Someone hadn't just known where they'd be. Someone had chosen that specific spot because it was ideal for an ambush. The traitor wasn't just leaking information. They were actively planning the attack. Across town, Sergeant Callahan sat in a secure room at the palace, answering questions from internal security. They'd been at it for 2 hours. Every detail of the attack. His response time. His training. His background. Sergeant, you acted admirably, the senior security officer said. But we need to understand how the attackers knew so much. I don't know, sir, Callahan replied. But I've been thinking. The way they moved, their gear, their tactics. These weren't ordinary thieves. They were military trained. What makes you say that? The formation. The hand signals. The extraction plan. I recognized it. Former special forces. I'd bet on it. The officer made notes. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth, sir. Someone with military experience planned this. And someone with royal access gave them the intelligence. After the interview, Callahan left the palace and walked through St. James's Park. His phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number, still playing hero? Your family lives on Baker Street, don't they? Callahan's blood turned to ice. They knew where his parents lived. They were threatening his family now. He broke into a run, calling Morris as he went. They're targeting my family, he said when she answered. Send officers to Baker Street now. Already done, Morris said. We've had protection on them since the first threat. Callahan, you need to come in. These people are escalating, not hiding while they hunt my family. That's not your call anymore. This is bigger than you. Callahan hung up. He had to get to his parents. As he ran through the park, he noticed a man in a dark coat following him, then another on a bench, speaking into a phone. His training kicked in. He changed direction, cutting through a crowd, then ducking into the underground station. He lost them in the maze of tunnels. When he emerged at Baker Street Station, police cars surrounded his parents' building. 2 officers stood guard outside. Callahan's mother opened the door as he approached, her face worried. Jamie, what's happening? The police won't tell us anything. You're safe, ma'am. That's all that matters. Inside, his father sat in the living room, a former Army sergeant himself. He looked at his son with knowing eyes. You made enemies, he said simply. I did my job. And now, they're coming for all of us. Callahan sat down, exhausted. I won't let them hurt you. Either of you? His mother brought tea, her hands shaking slightly. The police said we might need to relocate. Go into protection. That's what it takes, Callahan said. But his father shook his head. We don't run. Never have. Never will. Callahan recognized the stubbornness. He'd inherited it. But this wasn't about pride. This was about survival. The people they were dealing with didn't make empty threats. They'd attacked royalty in broad daylight. They wouldn't hesitate to hurt civilians. That night, Detective Inspector Morris made a breakthrough. The forensic team had recovered a partial fingerprint from the warehouse. It matched a man named Dmitry Volkov, a former Russian Special Forces operative who'd gone rogue years ago. He was wanted in 6 countries for armed robbery and assassination. This is bigger than we thought, Maurice told her team. Volkov doesn't work cheap. Someone paid him a fortune to go after the royals, but who? One of her detectives asked. It's what we need to find out. Maurice pulled up Volkov's file. His last known associate was Viktor Kozlov, another former operative. They'd worked together on several high-profile jobs across Europe. If Volkov was involved, Viktor was likely the leader of the group. Put out an international alert, Maurice ordered, and get me everything on Viktor Kozlov. Bank records, travel history, known contacts, everything. As her team scrambled, Morris's phone buzzed. It was a text from an encrypted number. Stop looking, or more people get hurt. Morris's jaw clenched. She'd been threatened before. It never worked. She forwarded the message to her tech team for tracing and kept working. Whoever was behind this had made a mistake. They'd shown their hand. Now it was only a matter of time before she closed in. But time was something she didn't have much of, because at that very moment, Victor and his crew were planning their next move. And this time, they weren't going after jewelry. They were going after blood. Victor stood in a new safe house, studying a photograph. It showed Sergeant Callahan leaving his parents' flat. Behind him, police officers stood guard. Victor smiled coldly. They think they're safe, he said to his crew. But nobody's safe. Not the Royals. Not the guard. Not his family. What's the play? One of his men asked. We send a message, Victor replied. We show them that interfering has consequences. You want to go after the guard's family? Not yet. First, we need leverage. Something that brings them all out into the open. Victor pulled out a new phone, his third, in 2 days, and made a call. When the voice answered, Victor's tone changed. More respectful. Almost deferential. We need to escalate, Victor said. The original plan failed. We need authorization for the next phase. The voice on the other end was silent for a long moment. You had one job. You failed. Someone interfered. Give us another chance. Let us finish what we started. Another pause. There is no second chance. You're compromised. The police are closing in. Disappear while you still can. We're not running, Victor said. Not until we finish this. Then you're on your own. The line went dead. Victor stared at the phone, rage building in his chest. They'd been abandoned, used and discarded like tools. Whoever had hired them, whoever had fed them intelligence, had cut them loose. What did they say? One of his men asked. He said, we're on our own, Victor replied. So we do this our way? And what's our way? Victor's eyes were dark. We make them bleed. That same evening, Princess Catherine attended a private dinner at Clarence's house with senior royals. Security was suffocating. Armed officers lined every corridor. Every guest had been vetted multiple times. But Catherine couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Prince William stayed close to her side. Princess Anne sat across the table, her expression unreadable. When the formal dinner ended, Anne pulled Catherine aside. How are you really doing? And asked. Catherine hesitated. I keep seeing their faces. The masks. The way they grab me? You're stronger than you think, Anne said. I saw it that night. You didn't fall apart, only because you were there. Anne shook her head. No. You have steel in you. Don't forget that. But later, alone in her quarters, Catherine felt anything but strong. She kept checking the locks on the windows, kept imagining footsteps in the hallway. The fear had lodged itself deep inside her. William found her standing by the window, arms wrapped around herself. Come to bed, he said gently. What if they come back? Catherine whispered. What if next time you're not here? What if the children? William pulled her close. The children are safe. You're safe. I promise you. Promises felt hollow now. Because somewhere in London, Victor and his crew were watching, waiting, planning their revenge. And this time, they weren't going to fail. Detective Inspector Morris worked through another sleepless night. Her team had tracked Victor's movements through Europe over the past year. Paris, Berlin, Rome. Each city had experienced a high profile. Robbery, jewelry, art, cash, Victor's. Crew was responsible for over 20 million pounds in stolen goods. But the royal attack was different. They hadn't stolen much. A bracelet. A handbag. Hardly worth the risk. Which meant the real goal had been something else. Humiliation. Terror. A message. Who hired them? Maurice wondered aloud. One of her detectives looked up. We traced the shell company. It leads back to a man named Thomas Hendricks. Former MI6. Morris's heart skipped. MI6? Are you certain? Yes, ma'am. He left the service 5 years ago under a cloud. Suspected of selling secrets? Where is he now? Unknown. Last known address was in Malta. But he could be anywhere. Morris stood up. Find him. I don't care what it takes. Find Thomas Hendricks. As her team mobilized, Morris received another call. This one from the palace. The king wanted a personal briefing. She was to come immediately, in the middle of the night, to discuss the investigation. This was unprecedented. The situation had reached the highest levels. When Morris arrived at Buckingham Palace, she was escorted to a private study. The king sat behind a desk, his expression grave. Beside him stood Prince William and Princess Anne. All three looked exhausted, Inspector the King said. Tell us everything. Morris laid out what they knew. The Russian operatives, the inside intelligence, the former MI6 agent. As she spoke, she watched their faces. Anger, disbelief, fear. Someone betrayed us, Princess Anne said quietly. Someone we trusted. We believe so, Your Royal Highness, Morris confirmed. Prince William's fists clenched. Find them. Find everyone involved. I don't care what resources you need. We're doing everything we can, Your Royal Highness. It's not enough. William's voice rose. My wife was attacked. My aunt was attacked. Our children could have been... He stopped himself, breathing hard. The king placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Inspector Maurice, you have the full support of the crown. Use any means necessary. But end this now, Maurice nodded. I will, Your Majesty. As she left the palace, Maurice's phone buzzed. Her tech team had traced the encrypted messages. They originated from a location in East London, an old industrial building near the Thames. Morris called for tactical support and headed there immediately. After days of hunting, they were finally closing in. But neither Morris nor anyone else realized that Victor was expecting them. The trap had been set, and the hunters were about to become the hunted. The industrial building loomed against the night sky, its windows dark and empty. Detective Inspector Morris arrived with a tactical Team 12 armed officers, all trained for higher-risk operations. They surrounded the building silently, moving like shadows. Morris wore a bulletproof vest and carried a radio. All units in position, she whispered. On my count, 3, 2, 1, go. The team breached the building through 3 entry points simultaneously. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Footsteps echoed off concrete floors. Room by room, they cleared the space. Empty offices. Abandoned machinery. Nothing. Ground floor clear, one team reported. Second floor clear, another confirmed. Maurice felt unease creeping up her spine. This was too easy. Where was Victor? Where was his crew? Then one of her officers called out from a back room. Inspector, you need to see this. Maurice rushed over. The officer stood in front of a wall covered in photographs. Pictures of Princess Anne, Princess Catherine, Prince William. The royal children at school, Sergeant Callahan with his parents. Every target, every vulnerability mapped out in disturbing detail. But in the center was something else. A photograph of Maurice herself, leaving Scotland Yard. A red X had been drawn across her face. They know we're here, Morris said. Pull back. Now, too late. The lights went out. Complete darkness. Then a hissing noise from the ventilation system. One of the officers shouted a warning, but his voice was cut off by coughing, gas. Someone yelled, "Get out." The team scrambled for exits, but doors that had been opened moments ago were now locked. Morris pulled at a door handle, then kicked at it. The gas was thickening, making her eyes water and her lungs burn. Through the chaos, she heard laughing. Not from inside the building. From speakers hidden in the walls. Did you really think you could catch us, Inspector? Victor's voice boomed. We've been 3 steps ahead this entire time. Maurice pulled her radio, gasping. All units evacuate. This is a trap. Outside, backup teams rushed forward with gas masks and breaching equipment. They smashed through windows and dragged the tactical team out one by one. Morris was the last to emerge, coughing violently. Paramedics rushed to treat the officers. None were seriously hurt. The gas had been more irritant than poison. But the message was clear. Victor was playing with them. Maurice stood on the street, watching the building, fury and frustration burning inside her. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the encrypted number. Stop chasing, or next time people die. But Maurice didn't scare easily. She called her chief superintendent. They set us up, she said. But they made a mistake. They had to be watching to know when we arrived. That means they're close. Very close. What do you need? More surveillance. I want every camera in East London reviewed. Traffic, security, private, everything. They can't vanish completely. While Morris coordinated the manhunt, something else was happening. Thomas Hendricks, the former MI6 agent, sat in a coffee shop in Prague, reading the news on his laptop. The headline read, "Royal Attack Investigation Intensifies, Former Intelligence Officer Sought." His face remained calm, but inside, his mind raced. They'd found his name. Found the connection. He'd been so careful for so long, but Victor's failure had exposed everything. Now he had two choices: run farther or eliminate the problem. Hendricks made a phone call to a secure number. When someone answered, he spoke quietly. The operation is burned. We need to clean up the loose ends, meaning everyone involved. Victor's crew. The witnesses. The detective getting too close, that's a lot of bodies. That's the price of failure. Hendricks hung up and closed his laptop. Within an hour, he'd disappeared from Prague, leaving no trace behind. Back in London, Sergeant Callahan couldn't sit still any longer. The threats against his family gnawed at him. He'd saved the princesses, but now everyone he loved was in danger. He needed to do something, to take action. To end this himself, late that night, Callahan left his parents' flat and headed to East London. He'd been asking questions, calling in favors from old army contacts, tracking rumors in the underworld. He'd heard whispers of Victor's crew hiding in the old docklands. It was reckless. It was dangerous. But Callahan couldn't wait for the police to do their job. He moved through dark alleys, staying in shadows, every sense alert. Then he saw them. 3 men loading equipment into a car near an abandoned warehouse. He recognized one of them from the attack, the man whose wrist he'd broken. Callahan moved closer, staying low behind shipping containers. He pulled out his phone to call Maurice, but before he could, something hard struck the back of his head. He collapsed, vision swimming. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Victor's face, smiling down. "Hello, hero," Victor said. "We've been waiting for you." When Callahan woke, he was tied to a chair in a cold, empty room. His head throbbed. Blood trickled down his neck. Victor sat across from him, cleaning a knife. "You cost me a lot," Victor said conversationally. "My reputation, my payday, my freedom." Callahan said nothing, testing the ropes binding his wrists. They were tight. "Professional knots. So now I'm going to cost you something," Victor continued. "Your life. Your family's lives. Maybe even the precious royals you tried to protect. You won't get near them again," Callahan said, voice hoarse. Victor laughed. "I already have." He held up his phone, showing a photograph. It was Princess Catherine, taken that very day at Kensington Palace through a telephoto lens. "We know where she goes. When she's alone, when her children are vulnerable." Callahan's blood ran cold. "If you touch them, you'll what? You're tied to a chair. You're helpless. Just like they were that night." Victor stood and walked to a table covered with weapons, guns, knives, tools. "The detective is looking for us, but she won't find us in time. Not before we finish what we started." He picked up a gun and checked the magazine. "First you, then your family. Then the royals, one by one, until everyone understands you don't interfere with us and walk away." Victor raised the gun, aiming it at Callahan's head. "Any last words, hero?" Callahan met his eyes, refusing to look away. Just one duck. Victor frowned, confused. Then the wall exploded inward. Armed police stormed through the breach, red laser sights cutting through the darkness. Armed police. Drop your weapons. Victor spun, firing blindly. The police returned fire. The room erupted in chaos. Callahan threw himself backward, tipping the chair, using it as cover. Bullets shredded the walls. Victor's crew scattered. But they were surrounded, outgunned, outmaneuvered. Detective Inspector Morris walked through the smoke, gun drawn. She looked down at Callahan, still tied to the chair on the floor. "You're an idiot, Sergeant. Nice to see you too, Inspector." Reese cut his ropes, while her team secured Victor and his crew. The wounded were treated. The rest were arrested. It was over. Finally over, but as Morris led Victor out in handcuffs, he looked at her and smiled. "You think you won? This is bigger than me. Bigger than all of us." "Shut up," Maurice said. "Thomas Hendricks sends his regards?" Morris stopped. "What did you say?" But Victor just laughed and said nothing more. The investigation was far from over.